Hello, everyone. Good morning to those of you in Canada, and good afternoon to those of you in Europe. Welcome to our third webinar by the CETA Market Access Program for EU Business, an EU-funded project implemented in close collaboration with the delegation of the European Union to Canada, with today's topic being the immigration and mobility of professionals. Before I introduce you to our presenter today, I want to briefly talk about CETA, short for the EU-Canada Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement. For EU businesses, it has importantly eliminated tariffs on 98% of European exports to Canada, and it has made administrative procedures easier, with lots of red tape being cut. It has brought numerous benefits for easier labor mobility across borders, an improved investment environment, standards cooperation, and better intellectual property protection for your businesses in Canada, and much more. In fact, between 2017 and 2019, EU goods exports to Canada rose from 32.2 to 38.3 billion euros per year, amounting to a near 20% increase following CETA's provisional application. I would like to also refer you to our previous webinars, the first one being how to export to Canada and benefit from CETA, and the second one, how to find a business partner in Canada. They provide a step-by-step guide on how you can benefit from CETA and what you need to do to expand into the Canadian market. I will briefly talk about the CETA Market Access Program. The objective of the program is that we assist European businesses, and particularly SMEs, to take full advantage of the CETA agreement. We help EU SMEs gain comprehensive sector-specific information about the new opportunities CETA brings in terms of removing market access barriers in Canada. We provide guidance to those businesses on how to benefit from CETA while addressing challenges in their business strategies. And finally, we create sustainable channels of communication between EU businesses in or seeking to enter Canada and institutional stakeholders. And now I would like to introduce you to our presenter for the day. Natasha Mignon is a lawyer at Imetis Legal Services in the field of business immigration and international mobility in Canada. She assists a clientele of human resource managers, professionals, students, entrepreneurs, and investors in immigration matters, including researching the best immigration strategies and programs, full and high-quality preparation of applications for work or study permits in Canada, intra-company changes, or labor market impact assessment, to name a few. With a both French and Canadian background, Natasha is a privileged partner to assist European companies in their business projects in the field of mobility and has extensive experience regarding CETA and mobility of professionals. With this being said, I now turn the floor to Natasha Mignon.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much, John, for your introduction. I'm very pleased to be here with you today and to see so many of you interested in Canada. I'd like to start this presentation by giving you a general idea of how big immigration is for Canada. So as you can see on the screen, in 2019, over 400,000 work permits were issued and over 341,000 permanent residents were admitted in the same year. As in any other country in the world, you have in-demand sectors. And the top 5 in-demand sectors in Canada in 2019 were the following: accommodation and food services, wholesale and retail trade, healthcare, social assistance, manufacturing, and construction. But what you can keep in mind is that market situation is different province to province. And actually, currently, we have Ontario, Quebec, and BC facing major labor shortages. Also, the IT industry is in high demand and constantly increasing all across Canada. Now let's move to the core of the presentation, the basic rule to immigrate to Canada. As European citizen, the first thing you must know is that your entry to Canada is not subject to the issuance of a visa. You'll just have to fill what is called an ETA, Electronic Travel Authorization, and this ETA will allow you to stay up to 6 months as a visitor in the country. But whatever other project you may have, either you want to work, you want to study, you want to operate a business, you'll have to apply for a specific status. You want to work, you'll have to work to apply for a work permit. And this is true also if you want to complete an internship or complete a trial. So that's the first rule to really understand. Few words now on COVID-19 and its impact on mobility. The main impact is that the borders are currently closed, and they're closed since March the 18th. What does it mean? Well, it means that foreigners cannot enter Canada unless they have a specific status. So unless they have a status of permanent resident, a work permit, or a study permit. So in normal times, you should be able to enter Canada with an ETA, as I just mentioned, but this is not true at this time of the year due to the pandemic. Also, we've noticed an extension of the processing delays. So the good news is that during the time of the pandemic, Canada has continued to process the immigration application. Yet, we've seen that the time processing were getting longer. And it's starting to get back to normal, but still we see some delays. Also, another good news is through the pandemics, we've seen a rising interest in Canada from EU nationals. So now, another key idea is that you have two major ways to immigrate to Canada. One is to come on a temporary status. And to expand your activities here, that would be to come as a temporary foreign worker. The other option is to come as a permanent resident. This is more for personal projects. The processing times are from 1 year to 5 years, depending on the program and on the province. So in this presentation, I'll be focusing on the application for a work permit. And this is where CETA is going to help you. So to obtain a work permit, the basic rule to understand is that a work permit comes with a job offer. Of course, there are exceptions. We are talking about immigration law, so there are always exceptions, but the main idea is to understand that to obtain a work permit, you need a job offer from an employer. And if you're an employer who wants to send an employee in Canada, you need to give him a job offer. And the rule for the employer is to prove that he has not been able to hire Canadians or permanent residents in the local market with what is called an LMIA, Labor Market Impact Assessment. And there are exceptions to this process. And this is where we're going to speak of CETA, because CETA's Chapter 10 provides a list of exemptions allowing EU citizens to obtain a work permit without going through the process of an LMIA. So let's see this EU-Canadian mobility of professionals under CETA. Before going through the new exemptions coming into force with CETA, I'd like to address the purpose of this chapter 10? Definitely it is to ease mobility of professionals between the EU and Canada, but also to facilitate temporary transfers of EU executives in Canadian branches or subsidiaries. It also helps addressing the demand for specific skills in in-demand sectors in Canada, as we mentioned previously, and definitely to facilitate business development and prospection across Canada. And how does CETA achieve this? Well, it provides new programs to obtain a work permit for mainly for three types of population: contractual services suppliers, EU executives in charge of supervising investment in Canada, or EU executives in charge of supervising the development of a new branch in, or subsidiary in Canada. So what you really need to know, to summarize, is that CETA allows EU companies to implement a strategy of expansion conducted by their own people, with their EU executive, with their EU professionals. Now let's move to the list, the specific list of new permits under CETA. We have mainly three of them: the intra-corporate transferees and their spouse. This is when you have an EU company established in the EU, and this company is opening a new branch, a new subsidiary in Canada. Under this exemption, you will be able to transfer your key personnel, either your executives or your specialists or even your graduate trainee, to Canada. And we'll move to the detail of the condition in the next slides, but have this idea in mind that you're opening a new branch in Canada, you'll be able to send there your key personnel. The investors exemption is a new exemption. This is something which was not available before CETA came into force. And here, you can send, well, it is when an EU national is coming to Canada to establish, to administer, to develop an investment in a Canadian company which is actively in business. You can use this new exemption for that kind of situation. Now the contractual service suppliers and independent professionals. This is where your company, your EU company, or yourself as a professional is entering into an agreement with a Canadian company. Here, your company, your EU company, does not have an establishment in Canada. You're just entering into a contract of service with a company in Canada. To perform the work, the person you're sending, or if it's yourself, will need a work permit. And you'll be able to obtain a work permit to perform the work, which is the purpose of the agreement, using these two exemptions, T43 or T47. I'll speak of business visitors a bit later. This is a work permit exemption also facilitated by CETA. More details now about the intra-corporate transferees, T44 and their spouse. The condition I would add is that under CETA, you can send, so you can send a senior executive, a specialist, or a graduate trainee. This person must have been employed or partner of the EU company for at least a year at the time of transfer, and the transfer can be done in a Canadian parent, branch, subsidiary, or affiliate company. What's interesting under CETA, and that's why we are using this exemption a lot, is the fact that we can obtain an initial period of 3 years, an initial work permit of 3 years. And it is interesting because, of course, the exemption of intra-corporate transfer existed before CETA and still exists, but the rule was to only get 1 year work permit when we were sending someone in a newly established company in Canada. So here with CETA, we have an initial period of 3 years, which is really interesting. And definitely this is the option to use when your company is expanding in Canada and is opening a company in the country. There's a mention, the second square here, that spouses can be included in the application, and that will be the case also for the other exemption under CETA. I'm moving to the investor category, which is a brand new category for EU nationals. To go more into the details of this exemption, know that you can either be the investor, so the work permit can be granted to the investor himself or to an executive coming to establish, administer, or develop the investment. Here, we can get a 1 year work permit ready to launch the investment in Canada, and it can then be renewed. So it's an interesting option for executive when the project is an investment project. Now the contractual service suppliers and independent professionals exemption, T43 or T47. Here and we can go into the details of the condition, but I'm going to give you an example. We used it a few months ago for a German IT company which was hired by a Canadian video game editor to help them switch to a cloud-based model. And the German IT company needed to send a developer here in Canada to perform the work, to perform the IT work. And we use this T47 exemption to help the developer, the German developer, getting a work permit. So, and yes, if you see in bold on the screen, it is interesting when the EU company is not established in Canada, when it does not have a company in Canada, either a branch or a subsidiary. We're just talking here of a contract of services between a company in the EU and a company in Canada. And there's a specific list of services that can be performed, but it is very wide, so it covers many activities. The business visitor exemption. So here, we are not talking of obtaining a work permit, not at all. We're talking of being exempted of having a work permit. And what CETA did here, it extended the list of permitted activities that would fall under the business visitor category. And I can, can list few of them. So European nationals can come as business visitor to participate in meetings and consultation, to do some research and design, to participate in marketing researches, to do seminars, to participate in trade fairs and exhibition. That kind of activities. You have a full list in Annex 10D of CETA. The length of the stay as business visitor under CETA is of 90 days. And the condition, like any business visitor status, is that the EU professional must remain exclusively employed and paid outside Canada. If not, then you'll need to file an application for a work permit. Last word on COVID-19. Remember, I told you that the borders are currently closed, so European citizens cannot enter Canada on this status now due to the pandemic. So after I gave you this overview of the new work permits available under CETA, I'd like you to focus on some key steps to implement your immigration strategy. So where to start? I think you have a few questions to really ask yourself. First, the definition of the project. Do I open a new branch? Should I acquire a company? Do I only want to invest? Am I carrying out a contract of services? What is my time frame? Who will I be affecting to Canada? Who am I sending to Canada? Is it me as the manager of the company? Is it some key personnel? Who are they? And is the project strictly a business project, or do I have a personal immigration intention? And why you should consider this key element. The expansion mode first, because remember from what we've been seeing that different immigration programs exist depending on the mode of expansion. Opening an acquisition, you are likely to fill an application for a work permit as an intra-company transfer. If you only sign a contract of services, you're likely to file an application for a work permit under T43 or T47. Also, the manager or your employee's citizenship is important because we've seen that the CETA's work permits are only available for EU citizens. Same thing here with the manager or employee experience and education. We've seen that they can be considered as key conditions under CETA for the obtention of a work permit. So now let's move to the how to apply for a work permit under CETA. There are 4 main ways to apply for a work permit. And here I want to make it clear that these options are available options for any kind of work permit you want to apply to, not only CETA's. CETA's has not changed, has not modified the way of submitting an application. So here we see 4 different ways of application, yet I would say that applying online through my CIC, my Citizenship Immigration Canada, is the kind of application we file in 90% of the cases. So this is really the major way of filing an application for a work permit. here what you do, the process allowed the EU applicant and its Canadian employer to prepare and submit the whole application package exclusively online. It means that the applicant open an online portal with the authorities, and everything is going to be submitted online. The immigration forms, but the documents as well, like his diploma, like his resume, so on and so forth. I'm moving to the next one now. Applying in person at the nearest VAC. So as you can see on screen, VACs are private companies which have formal contracts with the government of Canada. So what you do here, you're taking an appointment in a VAC and you're bringing all your documents. I would say that these tend to disappear, so I won't be detailing this mode. The last two ones are pretty interesting. They are not available at this time of COVID because you won't be, as European national, allowed to fly to Canada without a work permit already approved. So here, requesting a preliminary opinion or applying for a work permit upon arrival is that concretely you will meet with a border officer upon arrival, and you will ask him to grant you a work permit. So you'll have your answer whether your work permit is approved when you land in Canada. It's a bit more risky, but we use it from time to time. Moving to the applying online through my CIC, I told you it's 90% of all the application we are submitted. There are two levels, the employer portal and the applicant portal. Through its employer portal, the employer submits an electronic job offer online and pays a fee of 230 Canadian dollars. The EU applicant pretty much does the same, and through his online portal, he submits all his documents. He submits also the proof of the job of his job offer submitted by his employer, and pay the fee online as well. Once the application is filed online, you'll have a time processing depending on where it is sent from few weeks to few months. At this time of the year, it is more few months. And at the end of the process, you normally receive a letter of introduction. And with this letter of introduction, you can go to Canada, present this letter of introduction, few other documents, and you'll be granted your work permit, which is pre-approved, will be issued by the officer agent. Requesting a preliminary opinion, why would you do that? You would do that to gain some time. Here is the employer who requests a preliminary opinion by email. He sends everything, every document to try to convince a specific unit of the immigration authority called IMWU that his employee is going to file an application for a work permit, and that all the conditions for this kind of work permit are met. And he received an answer within 14 days. So you're gaining time compared to an online application. If the opinion is positive, then your employee, the employee, can fly with this positive opinion and ask the immigration officer to issue a work permit based on this preliminary opinion. Of course, the immigration officer could refuse to issue the work permit if if he doesn't agree with the preliminary opinion, but we don't really see that often. Actually, I've never seen it. And last option, maybe it's a more risky option. It's to apply for the work permit upon arrival. So as a European citizen, you come to Canada with a bunch of documents and you're gonna apply in person when you arrive in Canada directly at the border officer. We do it sometimes because the main interest is that there absolutely no deal, no time processing. The issuance, the preparation and the issuance of your work permit is immediate. We use it, but it is risky because in case the agent refuse to issue a work permit, the person can be sent back to his home country. So it is risky, and I wouldn't recommend that you follow that path unless you have taken legal advice and that you're 100% sure that all the criteria for the work permit you're seeking are met. So in concrete terms and in conclusion, I'd like you to focus maybe on 3 steps regarding immigration. So before step 1, before starting any immigration application, you have to define precisely the project. Then comes the suitable immigration strategy. Step 2, undertake the procedures to obtain the status you want. And always make sure to anticipate the status of the relative, the spouse, the children. Children may need study permits. Some children don't need a study permit. So this has to be figured out in step 2. And once in Canada, with a work permit, a work permit is not renewable automatically. So always make sure that you or your employees maintain a legal status in Canada and anticipate the work permit renewals. So that will finish the few words I wanted to tell you about CETA and about the immigration opportunities under CETA. I think, John, if you agree, we can open the Q&A session.
Perfect. Thank you very much for presentation, Natasha. Now, we do have one question that reads, how long do the different processes take?
It's a good question. Well, when I say that you apply online, but then your application is by the system, through the system, sent to the different Canadian embassies across the world. So you'll have the delays are determined by the embassy itself, but it is public information and you can easily get this information. I know because I've checked that this week in Paris. The processing time are currently of 15 weeks. And also know that for key positions, we have a possibility to ask a 2 weeks treatment, but at this time with COVID, this 2 weeks treatment is not available.
Do you anticipate any further flexibilities under CETA in 2021, taking into account the new realities of post-COVID-19 world? For example, do you expect any digitization of work permits for CETA applicants? Thank you.
Well, actually, we've seen, but it's not really related to CETA. We've seen improvement in the filing of application for immigration application in Canada due to COVID, because we could not meet with agents anymore. So we used to have some application that we had to send, like LMIL, like I mentioned previously, was paper form that has to be sent. Now you can do that online. So I've seen improvement in Quebec as well. I've seen some improvement. It's not directly linked with CETA because, as I mentioned previously, all CETA applications can be submitted online.
Based on your experience, how familiar are Canadian immigration authorities with the CETA rules? Do you have any advice for any individuals who arrive into Canadian immigration and run into problems at the border?
Well, because most of our clients are European companies. So when CETA came into force in 2017, September 2017, if I remember well, we use it in the first week, and we haven't stopped yet. And I've been noticing that the immigration officers are quite liberal in granting the work permits under CETA. This is my experience from what I see in the assistance of clients we have. Well, I think the main advice is to always be clear and sincere, because the worst thing to do in immigration is to lie to an agent. So, better be clear, better to explain yourself, and I think that that's the key of everything. Then, if you get a work permit refused, it may well be because the agent will say, no, you didn't pick the right exemption. You're not eligible to that kind of work permit, but you can very well use another one. So that's a refusal, but I would say that's an administrative refusal. So the thing is to always be clear and sincere. I give you an example. I was talking about the intra-company transfer and contractual services work permit. Well, for instance, you come to Canada and you apply for a consultant work permit, but then the agent realized that you have a company established in Canada. The agent may well refuse your work permit, but it is refused because you don't meet the criteria of that specific program. But you can very well meet the criteria for an intra-company transfer. So that's why the immigration strategy is very important. It is very important to know the available options.
Does the process take longer for some sectors?
Oh, it's a good question. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The delays are not depending on the program you're using. Delays are not depending on the sector you're working in. What may take longer is if you have, for instance, a medical situation. If you have traveled a lot, because the immigration authorities may have few verification to make, but it is not depending on the sector. And I would add a but to this answer, because in this time of pandemic, which is very specific, we have a list of priority positions. So of course, if you're coming as a nurse at this time of the year, your work permit application would be treated in priority. Anything at this time of the year which is related to the fight against the pandemic, against COVID-19, will be treated as a priority. So for that kind of positions, and we can easily obtain work permits in a week or two.
Intra-company transferees under CETA can get first permits for startups for 3 years, as opposed to the 12 months for regular C12s. Does this apply to specialized knowledge transferees as well, or only to senior managers?
A good question. It applies to both categories. But of course, there's a third category under CETA, which is the graduate trainee. It doesn't apply to graduate trainee. So it applies to key personnel, executives, or specialists.
Are professional experiences in Europe recognized in Canada?
Yes, it is if we're talking of the consultant's work permit, but it is the diploma itself is not automatically recognized. I mean, if you come as an attorney, we can recognize the work experience, but you won't be allowed to work in that capacity in Canada. You need the proper license. Is it the sense of the question? I'm not sure this was the sense of the question, because the experience will be taken into account if we need, for instance, for a consultant work permit. I think CETA requires the professional under T43 to have a 6 years of experience in the field. Okay, so if he's been working as an IT developer 6 years previously before it comes to Canada, that would be recognized. But if it comes to work and the position is regulated by a professional body, of course, that won't be recognized. So all regulated profession won't be recognized automatically.
Which sectors are witnessing an increase in immigration and work permits to Canada from the EU?
IT, definitely. I think this is becoming maybe 50% of our activity, of the work permit we do.
Do some provinces have specific programs to facilitate entry of professionals, or is the system only dealt with the federal umbrella?
Well, CETA applies across Canada, so it's not just to come to Quebec or to Ontario. It applies everywhere. You have also you have specific programs. They're more federal. For instance, you have you have exemption for francophones going to work everywhere in Canada except Quebec. So they can easily get a work permit. You have specific programs set up by provinces for permanent residency. Quebec also has a list of specific occupation where you can go through a simplified process of LMIA.
What are the advantages of CETA business visitors to Canada compared to regular business visitors in terms of the allowed activities?
I think it's broader, but it's true that you first have to qualify under the general provision, and if not, then you'll go to CETA. That's how the policy works. Because when you come as a visitor, you have, as a European, you have a 6 months authorization to stay in Canada. But what we see in reality is that when you say that you're entering as a business visitor, the agent will ask you, how long will you stay here? So, and generally, it won't let you more than a week or 2 weeks. So what we can do with CETA is to plan directly to stay for 90 days to do commercial prospection. In that way, it is interesting. And I think that if you go in the details of the different activities, it is a bit broader under CETA. So
Thank
what
you.
I like is the possibility to request this 90-day period.
Are there any interprovincial issues regarding the recognition of work permits or of professional experience? For instance, an engineer being hired in Quebec but who wishes to move to British Columbia.
I don't understand. You mean the person, because when you've been granted a work permit, it would be limited to normally to a position, a company, and a province. So I don't really understand the situation where you can be granted a work permit for Ontario, for instance, and then you want to go work in another province. Is that the situation?
Yes, I believe that is what the question is. Yes,
Okay.
asking.
So if when you're applying for a work permit to work across Canada, you have to be very specific in the application that you're asking for a work permit, which is going to be open for work in every province. Okay, and you would obtain this for executive positions mainly. Then you need to go through what's called the CNP, which is a NOC, National Occupation Classification, and you'll see position by position the requirement to work in this position province by province. And if there are specific requirements, you'll be able to see it consulting this NOC. And absolutely, I mean, if to be an engineer in Nova Scotia, for instance, you need to be member of an organization, of a regulation body. You won't be able to obtain a work permit in that capacity. So what we have, sometimes we have, you can obtain with the, but this is another subject, but you can obtain with the regulation bodies a limited right of practice in your occupation.
If I understand correctly, we ask for a preliminary opinion, and if it's positive, we obtain the permit upon arrival. What are the fees?
The fees are always the same. It's 230 Canadian dollars from the employer side, and it is 155 Canadian dollars on the applicant side, plus $85 for the biometrics. It's always the same price, and the request for preliminary opinion is free. There's no fees when you file it. But it is not available at this period of time. I just want to be clear on that. I'm sorry to insist, but it's just due to the pandemic. Unless you already have a letter of introduction or a valid work permit, you won't be allowed to fly to Canada. And also, preliminary opinion can only be granted for person outside Canada. So I don't know if the audience, some of you are already in Canada, you can't go through that path.
If I understand correctly, CETA offers exemptions, but does not speed up the processing time. Is this the case?
This is the case, yeah. It's new vehicles that we have for European citizens, absolutely.
Okay, well, I would like to thank everyone who joined us today, and a great big thank you to Natasha Mignon for this wonderful presentation. We would also like to mention that the CETA report on mobility of professionals, commissioned by the European Commission's DG Trade and developed by Natasha Mignon herself, is now available for everyone. This concludes our webinar, and again, thank you very much for your time, and we wish you a safe and joyous holiday season.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.